The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched before G1 Park like an ancient cathedral, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 worlds. She stood at the human delegation podium, her hands clasped behind her back, watching as the voting continued. One by one, the representatives of 63 species cast their decision. The holographic display showed the count climbing steadily. 50 votes to expel humanity. 51. 52. Giwan's face remained calm. Inside, a quiet sadness settled in her chest. She had spent 15 years as humanity's ambassador to the Council. 15 years of negotiations, treaties, and careful diplomacy. Now it was ending, not with war or drama, with a simple vote. The Valorian representative stood, his scales shimmering under the chamber lights. "The Empire of Valoria votes to expel," he announced, his voice carrying a note of triumph. That made 53 votes. The measure would pass. It needed only 40 votes, and there were still 10 species yet to cast their decision. Thralvin, the council speaker, watched from his elevated platform. The ancient Valorian had pushed for this vote for months, citing humanity's aggressive expansion, their unpredictable nature, their military strength. "They are too dangerous," he had said in countless sessions. "They do not belong among civilized species." The final votes came quickly. 58 species voted to expel humanity. Only 5 voted against. The chamber erupted in murmurs and whispers. Some delegates looked relieved. Others appeared uncertain, their expressions troubled. Thralvin struck his ceremonial staff against the floor, and silence fell. "The vote is decided," he declared. "By the authority granted to this council, humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All human personnel, military forces, and assets must withdraw from council space within 30 standard days. This decision is final." All eyes turned to G1. The delegates expected anger. They expected protests, threats, perhaps even tears. Some had prepared speeches to defend their votes. Others braced for human fury. G1 simply bowed, a gesture of respect that seemed to confuse half the chamber. When she straightened, her voice was steady and clear. "The human delegation acknowledges the Council's decision. We will comply fully and withdraw all personnel within the specified time frame. We thank the Council for the century we spent as members and wish you all prosperity." She turned and walked from the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Her small delegation followed, their faces carefully neutral. The chamber door closed behind them with a soft hiss. Behind the scenes, the message reached Admiral Hajun Kim within minutes. He stood on the bridge of the human flagship Defiant, reading the transmission twice to be certain he understood correctly. Around him, his command crew waited, their faces tense. "Confirmed," Hajun said quietly. "We've been expelled. Begin Operation Exodus." Crew moved with practiced efficiency. Messages flew across human military networks throughout Council space. Every human ship, every outpost, every research station received the same order: withdraw. Leave nothing behind. Take everything on the research station orbiting Kelver 3. Dr. Mingi Choi received her orders and immediately began securing data. She supervised a team of scientists who had spent 20 years studying exotic diseases, developing vaccines, and sharing their research freely with the Council. Now, they encrypted every file, every formula, every piece of research. The data belonged to humanity, and humanity was leaving. "What about the joint projects?" one of her assistants asked, gesturing to the labs where they worked alongside Telkari and Brenthian scientists. "We take all human contributions," Minji replied. "Anything we developed, anything we funded, anything with human intellectual property. Document everything carefully. Cross-council space." The same scene repeated. Human engineers left detailed manuals for the systems they maintained, but they took their expertise with them. Human traders closed their shops and warehouses, settling accounts with meticulous care. Human military commanders began the complex process of withdrawing defense fleets from dozens of star systems. The Kresh containment line was one of the most difficult withdrawals. Commander Sumi Lee stood on the bridge of her patrol ship, looking at the tactical display. For 50 years, human ships had maintained this network of sensors, patrol routes, and rapid response stations. The Kresh Horde, a brutal species of raiders, had been kept in check by this system. Now the humans were dismantling it. "Captain, are we really just going to leave this open?" her tactical officer asked. "The Kresh will. We follow orders," Sumi interrupted. "The Council expelled us. This is Council space now. They can defend it themselves." She gave the command, and her ship began disabling the sensor network. One by one, the early warning stations went dark. The patrol routes were abandoned. Within days, the entire containment line would be gone. Back on the Council homeworld, ambassadors from various species began to realize something disturbing. The humans weren't arguing. They weren't negotiating for more time. They weren't trying to change the Council's mind. They were simply leaving, quickly and quietly, with an efficiency that bordered on unsettling. "Perhaps we should have given them 60 days instead of 30, one ambassador murmured to another. "They seem almost eager to depart." "Good riddance," another replied. "We'll be safer without their warships prowling our borders." But not everyone was celebrating. The Minbari delegate, who had voted against expulsion, watched the human withdrawal with growing concern. His species had worked closely with humans on agricultural projects. Human techniques had increased crop yields across a dozen worlds. Now those human advisors were packing their belongings and leaving? "What will we do without their expertise?" he asked his aide. "We managed before they came," the aide replied. "We'll manage again." Thralvin held a press conference, speaking to journalists from across Council space. "Today marks a new era of security and stability," he announced. "The unpredictable human element has been removed. The Council can now pursue a more peaceful path forward." Reporters asked about the human contributions to defense, trade, and research. Thralvin dismissed these concerns with a wave of his hand. "We are grateful for their service, but we are perfectly capable of handling our own affairs. Other species will fill the void they leave behind." In her private quarters, Guan reviewed the withdrawal reports. Everything was proceeding smoothly, perhaps too smoothly. The humans were taking everything with them, including things the Council had come to depend on. Medical databases, engineering specifications, trade agreements, defense protocols. A century of human integration into Council society was being carefully extracted. Like removing a load-bearing wall from a building, she recorded a final message to be delivered after humanity's departure. In it, she spoke calmly and without bitterness. "The Council has made its choice, and we respect that choice. We came in peace, served faithfully, and now depart in peace. Perhaps one day circumstances will allow us to meet again as friends. Until then, we wish the Council well." 28 days later, the last human ship left Council space. The vast human embassy complex stood empty, its halls silent. Human ships vanished into deep space, heading toward independent colonies far from Council borders. They left behind clean facilities, settled debts, and a strange quietness. The Council celebrated its newfound autonomy. There were speeches about unity and self-determination. There were promises of a brighter future. But in the outer sectors where human patrol ships no longer flew, something else was stirring. The Kresh scouts had noticed the absence. They were beginning to move. 3 months passed since the last human ship departed from Council space. The galaxy seemed quieter somehow, though few could explain exactly why. Trade continued. Ships moved between stars. Life went on. Then came the distress call from Tau. Shend. The colony world sat on the outer edge of Council territory, home to 70,000 Valorian civilians. It was a peaceful agricultural world known for its golden grain fields and quiet communities. When the Kresh Horde ships appeared in orbit, the colonists had minutes to react. The colony defense grid activated automatically, its plasma cannons tracking the incoming raiders. But something was wrong. The targeting systems flickered and failed. The power conduits overloaded. Within an hour, the entire defense network went dark. "This is Taoshan Colony, requesting immediate military assistance." The transmission screamed across Council communication channels. "We are under attack by Kresh forces." "Defense grid, is offline. We have no protection. Please, someone help us. The message reached the council within hours. Emergency sessions were called. Military commanders scrambled to assess the situation. The nearest council defense fleet was 4 days away at maximum speed. 4 days? The colony would fall in less than one, in the neutral trading station of Meridian Point. Captain Sumi Lee heard the distress call. She sat in the command chair of her ship, the Wanderer, now flying under independent human colors. Her crew gathered around the communication console, listening to the desperate pleas from Talshin. "Captain, we should help them," her weapons officer said. "We're only 6 hours away at full speed." Sumi's jaw tightened. She wanted to give the order. Every instinct told her to jump to hyperspace and race to the colony's defense. But she forced herself to remain still. "We're not council anymore," she said quietly. "That's their space, their responsibility." "But those are civilians," the engineer protested. "Families, children." "I know," Sumi replied, her voice hard. "I know exactly what they are. And I know that 3 months ago, those same Valorians voted to expel us. They said they didn't need human protection." She stood up, turning away from the console. "We monitor only. No intervention. That's an order." Her crew fell silent, but the tension on the bridge was thick enough to touch. They listened to the transmissions from Talshin. The screams. The explosions. The silence that followed. Sumi closed her eyes and remembered the old days. She had commanded this same ship 2 years ago, patrolling the Kresh containment line. Back then, dozens of human ships maintained a network of sensors and rapid response stations. They watched the Kresh movements constantly. When raiders tried to break through, human ships intercepted them within hours. The system had been elegant in its simplicity. Early warning sensors detected Kresh ships before they reached colony worlds. Patrol ships positioned strategically could respond to threats immediately. The raiders learned that attacking council colonies meant facing swift human retaliation. For decades, the Kresh stayed contained, but when humanity withdrew, they took that entire network with them. The sensors were dismantled, the patrol routes abandoned, the rapid response stations closed. The Kresh had been testing the borders ever since. Probing for weaknesses, they found one at Tall single quotes. Shen, the colony fell in 17 hours. Kresh warriors landed on the surface, pillaging whatever they could carry and destroying the rest. When it was over, 70,000 Valorians were dead. The raiders departed, their ships loaded with stolen supplies. Leaving behind smoking ruins, the council held emergency sessions. Delegates demanded explanations. How had the defense grid failed? Why was the nearest fleet so far away? Where were the early warning systems that should have detected the Kresh ships? Admiral Corvin, of the Council Defense Force, stood before the assembled delegates, his expression grim. "The defense grid failed because its maintenance schedule was designed by human engineers," he explained. "We don't have personnel trained to maintain those systems." As for early warning, that network was operated entirely by human forces. When they withdrew, the coverage disappeared. Silence fell over the chamber. The implications settled slowly, like dust after an explosion. "You're saying we can't defend our own borders?" one delegate asked incredulously. "I'm saying our defense strategy was built around human capabilities," Corvin replied. "We relied on their repeat response doctrine, their sensor networks, their patrol patterns. Without them, we have gaps in our coverage." Large gaps. Thralvin stood from his seat, his scales flushed with anger. "This is unacceptable. We are the Galactic Council. We represent 63 advanced civilizations. Are you telling me we cannot defend one colony world from simple raiders?" "The Kresh are not simple raiders, Speaker," Corvin said. "They're a warrior culture with advanced ships and weapons. The only reason they've been contained for 50 years is because human forces made them afraid to venture beyond their territory. That fear is gone now." In the observation gallery, Ambassador Nara Yun watched the proceedings with careful attention. She was one of the few humans who remained in council space, serving as an official observer for the new independent human coalition. Her role was to watch and report, nothing more. She made notes in her personal log that evening. "The Council is beginning to understand what they've lost," she wrote. "But understanding and accepting are different things. They still believe they can replace human capabilities through determination and resources. They don't yet realize that some things cannot be easily replaced." More reports came in over the following weeks. Trade routes that humans had protected now required expensive military escorts. Pirates grew bolder, attacking merchant ships that once traveled safely. Insurance rates climbed sharply, driving up the cost of goods across Council space. The merchant guilds sent formal complaints to the Council. "We cannot sustain these losses," their representative declared. "Either provide adequate protection or allow us to hire private security." "The Council will provide protection," Thralvin assured them. "We are expanding our defense fleets. These temporary difficulties will be resolved." But expanding defense fleets required money, ships, and trained personnel. The Council discovered that humans had been providing security services at a fraction of what other species would charge. Replacing those forces would require tripling the military budget. The member species balked at the increased costs. On the trading station at Kepler's Edge, Dr. Hanpark received his first request since the withdrawal. The Telkuri homeworld was experiencing an outbreak of crimson fever, a disease that spread rapidly and killed within days. Thousands were already infected. Tens of thousands more would die without treatment. Hune read the desperate message from the Telkari Health Ministry. They needed the vaccine formula immediately. The disease was spreading too fast for their scientists to develop a cure in time. Hune remembered developing that vaccine. It had taken his team 3 years of intense research, funded entirely by human resources. They had shared it freely with the Council at the time, asking nothing in return. That was when humans were members, partners in the great galactic community. He forwarded the request to his superiors and waited for their response. It came within hours, and it was not what the Telkari hoped for. "The vaccine research was conducted on human facilities with human funding," the message read. "As we are no longer Council members, we have no obligation to share proprietary research. However, we are willing to negotiate a purchase agreement at standard market rates." Hune sent the reply to the Telkari Ministry. The response came back within minutes, filled with outrage and disbelief. They called it cruel, inhumane, a betrayal of the spirit of scientific cooperation. They demanded the formula be released immediately. Ambassador Nari drafted the official response. "When humanity was a Council member, we shared our research freely and asked nothing in return. The Council chose to expel us. We are now an independent nation. You will be treated as you treat other independent nations. If you wish to purchase the vaccine formula, we are open to negotiations. If not, we wish you success in developing your own cure." Telkari government refused to negotiate, calling the human terms extortion. The death toll climbed. 5,000 dead. 10,000. 20,000. Finally, with their hospitals overwhelmed and their people dying in the streets, the Telkari agreed to human terms. The formula was delivered, and the outbreak was contained, but the damage was done. The Council learned a painful lesson. Humanity had been generous when they were members. That generosity was not guaranteed now. 6 months after humanity's departure, the cracks in the Council's foundation grew into chasms. What began as isolated incidents became a pattern of systemic failure. The galaxy that once ran smoothly now stuttered and stumbled like a machine. Missing critical parts, the economic problems appeared first. Trade between Council worlds had always been profitable, but now the costs were climbing dangerously. Ships that once traveled freely between systems now needed armed escorts. The pirates knew that human patrol ships no longer guarded the trade lanes, and they struck with increasing boldness. The merchant guilds calculated their losses and presented the numbers to the Council. "We're losing 30% of our profits to security costs," their spokesperson announced. "If this continues, interstellar trade will become economically unviable for smaller companies." Thralvin listened to the complaints with growing frustration. "Hire more guards," he suggested. "Improve your ship defenses." "We're already doing that," the spokesperson replied. "But it doesn't change the fundamental problem. The trade lanes are no longer safe. Before the humans left, we've paid almost nothing for security because their military provided protection as part of their council duties. Now we must pay market rates for private security forces. The costs are unsustainable. The council debated solutions but found none that didn't require massive spending increases. Some delegates suggested building new defense stations along trade routes. Others proposed a council-funded patrol fleet. Every solution came with a price tag that made the member species uncomfortable. We should have considered these costs before voting to expel the humans, one delegate muttered. Loud enough for others to hear? Thralvan's scales darkened with anger. That is enough. We will find solutions that don't involve crawling back to the humans for help. But the problems multiplied faster than solutions could be found. On the orbital station circling Brenthus Prime, the water purification system failed catastrophically. Thousands of inhabitants faced dehydration within days. The station engineers traced the problem to a critical component that required specialized maintenance. We need someone who understands human engineering specifications, the chief engineer reported. The entire purification system was designed and installed by human contractors 20 years ago. We don't have anyone with that expertise. Station administrator sent urgent messages to every engineering firm in council space. Most replied that they couldn't help. One company offered to send a team, but their estimate was 6 weeks of work at costs that would bankrupt the station's entire annual budget. In desperation, the administrator sent a message to the nearest human colony. The response came from a human engineering firm, and it was professional but cold. We can send a team within 48 hours. Our rate is 5,000 credits per engineer per day, plus travel costs and equipment fees. Payment in advance. The administrator nearly choked when he saw the price. This is robbery, he protested. The human firm's response was simple. This is the market rate for emergency engineering services requiring specialized expertise. You're welcome to find another provider if our rates don't suit your needs. The station paid. The human engineers arrived, fixed the system in 3 days, and left. The total cost exceeded the station's entire annual maintenance budget. When the council reviewed the incident, they discovered something troubling. Humans had maintained that purification system for 2 decades at a fraction of the cost, charging barely enough to cover their expenses. They were doing it almost for free, one analyst reported. They considered it their duty as council members. We never realized how much we were saving. Similar discoveries emerged across council space. Jump gate calibrations that humans had performed regularly were now drifting out of alignment, causing navigation errors. Communication relays that human technicians had serviced were developing glitches. Power distribution networks were operating below optimal efficiency. Every system that humans had touched during their century as council members was now degrading slowly. The problems weren't catastrophic individually, but together they formed a picture of an infrastructure falling apart. Dr. Minji Choi watched these developments from her new laboratory on the human research colony at Haven's Edge. She received daily requests for assistance, technical consultations, and research data. Each request came with increasing desperation, and each was answered with professional courtesy and market rate pricing. One request particularly caught her attention. The Telkari government was facing another medical crisis. This time, a mutated strain of the crimson fever they had dealt with months earlier. The vaccine formula they had purchased from humans no longer worked against the new strain. We need your help immediately, the Telkari health minister pleaded in his message. Our people are dying. We don't have time to develop a new vaccine. Minji consulted with her team and reviewed the new strain's genetic data. They could modify the vaccine formula in a matter of days. The question was whether they would. She forwarded the request to Ambassador Narayun, who was handling all diplomatic communications with the council. Nari's response came within hours. What are they offering in exchange? Nothing, Minji replied. They're asking us to provide the modified formula as a humanitarian gesture. Nari's laugh was bitter. Humanitarian gestures are for friends and allies. The council expelled us, remember? They made it clear we're not their friends. Tell them we'll provide the modified formula in exchange for full payment of outstanding debts from the first outbreak, plus standard consulting fees for the new research. Minji sent the terms. The Telkari government exploded in fury, accusing humans of profiteering from their tragedy. They took their complaints to the council, expecting sympathy and support. They got neither. The other member species were dealing with their own problems and had little patience for Telkari complaints. You refused to pay market rates last time, one delegate pointed out. Now you're surprised the humans won't help for free? They're not our charity service. The debate raged for days, while Telkari citizens continued dying. Finally, facing riots in their streets and a collapsing healthcare system, the Telkari government agreed to human terms. The modified vaccine was delivered and the outbreak was contained again. But the political damage was severe. The Telkari representatives stood before the council and delivered a scathing speech. We voted to expel the humans because we believed we were stronger without them. We were wrong. They provided services we didn't value because we never had to pay their true cost. Now we understand what we lost. Thralvin tried to maintain order, but dissent was spreading through the chamber. More delegates were openly questioning the expulsion decision. Some suggested opening negotiations with the Human Coalition. Others argued for a formal apology, an invitation to rejoin. We will do no such thing, Thralvin declared. We are the Galactic Council. We do not crawl to expelled members begging for their return. We will solve these problems ourselves. But the problems kept multiplying. Food shipments were delayed due to unsafe trade routes. Medical supplies were scarce. Infrastructure continued degrading. The economy slipped into recession as costs rose and trade decreased in her office on the council homeworld. Nari Yoon maintained her meticulous records. She documented every request for human assistance, every emergency where human expertise was needed, every failure that could have been prevented if humans were still council members. She sent regular reports to Giwan Park, who was now serving as Prime Minister of the Independent Human Coalition. The council is suffering, she wrote, but they're too proud to admit their mistake. They keep believing they can fix things without our help. Giwan read the reports with mixed feelings. She felt no satisfaction in the council's struggles. But she also knew this was necessary. The council had taken humanity's contributions for granted for too long. They had dismissed human value because humans asked for so little in return. Let them struggle. A while longer, she wrote back to Nari. They need to fully understand what they lost before we can discuss any return. Pride must give way to reality. The galaxy watched and waited. The council tried to project strength and confidence, but everyone could see the truth. The great alliance that had governed the galaxy for centuries was failing, and the species they had expelled in contempt was now the one they desperately needed. 1 year after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council faced its darkest hour. The accumulated failures and cascading problems had brought the Great Alliance to the edge of collapse. Member species openly questioned the leadership. Trade had declined by 40%. 3 separate medical crises were ongoing. The Kresh Horde was raiding deeper into Council territory with each passing month. And now, the unthinkable was happening. The emergency alerts screamed across every communication channel in Council space. Kresh battle fleet detected in Valorian home system. Estimated strength, 200 ships. Intercept course for Valoria Prime. Time to orbital assault, 18 hours. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted over each other, demanding explanations and solutions. Thralvin stood at his podium, his scales pale with shock. His homeworld, the capital of the Valorian Empire, was about to be attacked by the largest Kresh fleet ever assembled. Admiral Corvin appeared on the main view screen, his expression grim. Our main defense fleet is in the Outer Rim, responding to raids on 3 separate colonies. We can redirect them, but they won't arrive for 72 hours. The secondary fleet is undergoing repairs after the last engagement. We have nothing in position to defend Valoria Prime. How many people are on the planet? Someone asked quietly. 4 billion, another delegate replied. 4 billion Valorians. The weight of that number settled over the chamber like a shroud. Without defense, the Kresh would bombard the planet from orbit before landing their warriors. The death toll would be catastrophic. This wasn't just an attack on a colony. This was an assault on one of the Council's founding member worlds. "Contact every available ship," Thralvin ordered, his voice shaking. "Merchant vessels, private yachts, anything with weapons. We need every ship we can get to Valoria Prime immediately," Sir Corvin said carefully. "Civilian ships won't stand against a Kresh battle fleet. It would be a massacre." "Then what do you suggest?" Thralvin shouted. "Should we simply abandon my homeworld to the raiders?" Silence fell. No one had an answer. The Council, with all its resources and technology, couldn't defend one of its own core worlds. The raiders they had kept contained for decades were now striking at the heart of their territory. One delegate cleared his throat. "There is one option we haven't discussed," Speak Thralvin demanded. "We could ask the humans for help." The suggestion hit the chamber like a physical blow. Delegates turned to stare at the speaker. A young Brenthian ambassador, who looked uncomfortable under the sudden attention. "The human fleet at New Terra is only 8 hours from Valoria Prime," he continued. "They have the ships and the capability to intercept the Kresh. If we ask them—" "No," Thralvin interrupted. "Absolutely not. We will not crawl to the humans begging for rescue." 4 billion lives, the Brenthian said quietly. "Is your pride worth 4 billion lives?" The question hung in the air. Thralvin opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. Around the chamber, delegates looked at each other, calculating the political cost of the unthinkable. If we ask for their help, what would they demand in return? Someone asked, "Does it matter?" Another delegate replied, "What price is too high for 4 billion lives?" The debate that followed was bitter and desperate. Some delegates argued they should negotiate with the Kresh instead. Others suggested evacuating the planet, though everyone knew 18 hours wasn't enough time to move for a billion people. A few still insisted they could mount a defense with civilian ships and hope, but reality was cruel and unavoidable. They had one option that might work. And every passing minute brought the Kresh fleet closer to Valoria Prime. Thralvin finally raised his hand for silence. His scales had lost all color, and he looked decades older than he had an hour ago. "Send a message to the human coalition. Request immediate military assistance defending Valoria Prime. Tell them we will discuss terms." The message was sent through diplomatic channels, marked with maximum priority. It reached Juan Park at the coalition headquarters on New Terra within minutes. She read it 3 times, then called an emergency cabinet meeting. "They're asking for our help," she said to the assembled ministers. "The Kresh are attacking Valoria Prime. The Council can't defend it." Admiral Hajun Kim pulled up tactical displays. "We have 20 ships in range. We could reach Valoria Prime in 7 hours if we leave immediately. That gives us enough time to intercept the Kresh before they reach the planet. Should we help them?" one minister asked. "After everything they did to us?" Giwan looked at the tactical display showing Valoria Prime, a blue-green jewel of a world where billions of innocent people lived their lives. Children playing in parks. Families eating dinner. People who had nothing to do with the Council's decision to expel humanity. "We help them," she said firmly, "but we do it on our terms. This is the moment we've been waiting for. The Council needs to understand that our help isn't free anymore. Not because we want to profit from their suffering, but because they need to respect what we offer." She drafted the terms personally, choosing each word carefully. Then she sent them to Commander Doyan Kong, who commanded the human fleet nearest to Valoria Prime. Doyan received the message aboard his flagship, the Horizon. He read the terms, nodded in satisfaction, and opened a channel to the Council. Thralvin appeared on the view screen, and Doyan saw immediately how much the speaker had aged in the past year. The Valorian looked exhausted, desperate, and afraid. "Commander Kong," Thralvin said, forcing his voice to remain steady, "thank you for responding so quickly. We need your help to defend Valoria Prime." "We're prepared to help," Doyan replied. "But first, we need to discuss terms." "Terms." Thralvin's scales flushed with anger. "We're talking about 4 billion lives, and you want to negotiate terms?" "Yes," Doyan said calmly. "When we were council members, We would have rushed to your defense immediately, asking nothing in return. But you expelled us. You made it clear we're not your allies. Now we're an independent power, and we conduct relations the way all independent powers do. Through agreements and treaties. What do you want? Thralvin asked bitterly. Doyon transmitted the document. These are our terms. The Council must formally acknowledge humanity's contributions over the past century in a public statement. You must issue an official apology for the expulsion. You must reinstate human membership with full voting rights and no probationary period. And you must provide reparations for economic losses we incurred during the forced withdrawal. Thralvin read the terms, his hands shaking. This is humiliation. You're asking us to admit we were wrong in front of the entire galaxy. Doyon agreed. Because you were wrong. You took us for granted, dismissed our value, and expelled us based on fear rather than reason. Now you need us, and we need you to understand that our help has value. Real value. Not something to be given freely and then discarded when it's no longer convenient. You would let 4 billion people die over pride? Thralvin asked. Would you? Doyon countered. You have 4 hours to decide. After that, the Kresh fleet will be too close for us to intercept effectively. Choose pride or choose life, speaker. But choose quickly. The transmission ended. In the council chamber, delegates erupted into furious debate. Some called the human terms reasonable. Others called them extortion. Thralvin sat at his podium, staring at the countdown timers showing hours until the Kresh reached his homeworld. He thought about his family on Valoria Prime, his children, his grandchildren. 4 billion people who would die because he was too proud to admit a mistake. With 3 hours and 47 minutes remaining, Thralvin stood. Call the vote, he said, his voice hollow. The council will vote on accepting human terms. The vote was 59 in favor, 4 against. The terms were accepted. Doyon received confirmation and immediately gave the order. All ships jumped to hyperspace. Destination, Valoria Prime. We're going to remind the galaxy why humans are worth having as friends. The human fleet jumped, racing toward a battle that would change everything. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valorian system with 23 minutes to spare. 20 warships against 200 Kresh raiders. The odds looked impossible, but Commander Doyon Kang had fought Kresh before. He knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their patterns. All ships, battle formation Delta, he ordered calmly. Weapons free. Target their command ships first. The human vessels moved with practiced precision, spreading into an attack pattern that maximized their firepower while minimizing their exposure. The Kresh fleet detected them immediately and altered course to engage, clearly confident in their numerical superiority. That confidence lasted exactly 4 minutes. The human ships opened fire with devastating accuracy. Missiles streaked across the void, each one finding its target with inhuman precision. Railgun rounds punched through Kresh armor like paper. Energy beams carved through shields and holes with surgical efficiency. Admiral Ajun Kim watched the battle from his command center on New Terra, observing the tactical feed with satisfaction. The Kresh fight like barbarians, he muttered. All aggression, no coordination. They never learned how to face an organized defense. The Kresh fleet scattered under the assault, their formations breaking apart as panic spread. They had expected to face weak defenses, or no resistance at all. Instead, they encountered military precision they couldn't match. Human ships danced through their formations, striking hard and fast before withdrawing beyond effective weapons range. On Valoria Prime, billions watched the battle on their view screens. They saw human ships protecting their world, fighting an enemy that would have slaughtered them all. Some wept with relief. Others felt shame, remembering how their government had voted to expel these same humans just 1 year ago. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, 60 Kresh ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest fled back toward their territory, pursued by human fighters until they crossed the border. Not a single human ship was lost. Doyon established orbit around Valoria Prime and sent a message to the planet's surface. This is Commander Kang of the human fleet. Valoria Prime is secure. The creche have been driven off. We'll maintain patrol until Council Defense Forces arrive. The response from the planet was overwhelming. Messages flooded in from government officials, military commanders, and ordinary citizens. Thank you. We're sorry. We were wrong. Please forgive us. Dune accepted the gratitude politely, but redirected most messages to the diplomatic channels. His job was done. Now came the harder part: rebuilding trust. 2 days later, the council convened for the formal ceremony. Every delegate was present, either in person or via holographic projection. The chamber was filled to capacity with observers, journalists, and officials from across council space. Everyone wanted to witness this moment. Thralvin stood at the central podium, looking smaller somehow than he had before. The past weeks had broken something in him. He had watched his pride nearly cost billions of lives, and that knowledge would haunt him forever. Members of the council, he began, his voice steady despite his obvious discomfort. We gather today to acknowledge a truth that has become painfully clear over the past year. When we voted to expel humanity from this council, we made a grave mistake. The chamber was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. For a century, humanity served this council with distinction, Thralvin continued. They protected our borders, maintained our infrastructure, shared their research freely, and asked for little in return. We took these contributions for granted. We dismissed their value because they came so freely. We feared their strength while ignoring how much we depended on their service. He paused, gathering himself. The past year has taught us what we should have known all along. Humanity was not a threat to this council. They were the foundation upon which much of our security and prosperity was built. When they departed, we did not become safer or stronger. We became vulnerable and weak. Giwan Park sat in the human delegation seats, watching Thralvin with an expression of careful neutrality. She had fought for humanity's dignity in this chamber for 15 years. Now she was witnessing something she had never expected to see: a genuine acknowledgement of humanity's worth. Therefore, Thralvin said, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer our sincere apology to humanity. We were wrong to expel you. We were wrong to doubt your loyalty. We were wrong to take your service for granted. We ask your forgiveness, and we formally invite humanity to rejoin this council with full membership and all privileges restored. He stepped back from the podium. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then applause began. It started slowly, but built into a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. G1 stood and walked to the podium. She looked out at the assembled delegates, seeing faces that had voted to expel her people just 1 year ago. Some looked ashamed. Others looked relieved. All of them looked humbler than they had before. The Human Coalition accepts the Council's apology, she said clearly. We accept the invitation to rejoin this body. But I want to be very clear about the terms of our return. The applause died. Delegates leaned forward, paying careful attention. We do not return as we were, Jiwan continued. The old relationship, where humanity provided so much while asking so little, is over. We return as equal partners. When we provide security, it will be through formal defense treaties with clear obligations on both sides. When we share research, it will be through cooperative agreements with proper credit and compensation. When we maintain infrastructure, it will be as contractors paid fairly for our expertise. She let that sink in for a moment. We will still help. We will still cooperate. We will still contribute to the common good. But we will do so on terms that acknowledge the value of what we provide. The galaxy has learned what happens when human contributions are taken for granted. We will not allow that to happen again. The delegates absorbed this silently. It was a harder stance than humanity had ever taken before. But after what they had experienced, no one could argue it was unfair. We believe in the ideals of this council, Jiwan said, her voice softening slightly. We believe that cooperation between species makes us all stronger. We believe in building a better, safer galaxy together. That's why we're coming back. But we're coming back as partners, not as servants. As equals, not as subordinates. She returned to her seat. The council voted formally on humanity's reinstatement. It passed unanimously. 63 votes in favor, 0 against. Over the following months, the changes became visible throughout Council space. Human ships returned to patrol the borders, but now they flew under formal defense treaties that compensated them fairly. Human engineers restored failing infrastructure, charging professional rates for their expertise. Human scientists resumed research cooperation. But with clear agreements about intellectual property and credit, the economy began recovering as trade routes became safe again. Medical crises were handled more effectively with human assistance available. Infrastructure stabilized as proper maintenance resumed. But the most important change was in attitude. The Council species no longer took human contributions for granted. They understood now what those contributions were worth. When humans helped, it was met with genuine gratitude rather than casual acceptance. In her office on the Council homeworld, Giwan reviewed the progress reports with satisfaction. The transition back into Council membership was proceeding smoothly. Better than smoothly, it was proceeding with mutual respect and clear understanding. Ambassador Yoon joined her for their weekly meeting. "How does it feel?" Nari asked. "Being back?" "Different," Guan replied. "Better, in many ways." The Council learned its lesson. "We learned ours too." "What lesson did we learn?" Nari asked curiously. "That sometimes you have to leave to show people what you're worth," Juan said. "We were too accommodating before. Too willing to accept being undervalued because we didn't want conflict. Walking away was painful, but it was necessary." She looked out the window at the Council complex, where delegates from dozens of species worked together on problems facing the galaxy. "Now we're back, but we're back on our own terms. We're respected. We're valued. We're partners, not just helpers." Nari nodded. "Do you think it will last? Will the Council remember these lessons?" "I think so," Giwan replied. "The past year was traumatic for them. They won't forget what they nearly lost. But even if they do start taking us for granted again someday, we'll know what to do." "Walk away again?" "If necessary," Juan confirmed, "but I don't think it will be. The galaxy has changed. Humanity has changed. We're not the species that quietly accepts whatever treatment others offer anymore. We know our worth now, and we'll make sure everyone else remembers it." Across the galaxy, in bars and meeting halls and government chambers, the story spread. Humanity had been expelled, departed in silence, and returned stronger than ever. Other species told the tale to their children as a lesson about respect and gratitude. The Council used it as a case study in their diplomatic training programs, but for the humans themselves, it was simply a reminder of something they should have known all along. Help freely given is often help taken for granted. Real partnerships require mutual respect, clear agreements, and honest acknowledgement of value.